T-Rex arms, flapping arms, lack of eye contact, too much eye contact, rude, silent, argumentative, juvenile, male. What do all of those have in common? Those are autistic stereotypes. And hi, I'm Kate, and do I fall into some of those categories? I sure do. Stereotypes start somewhere. Are they the end-all be-all? Oh, God, no. And are they damaging? Sometimes. Did I know about the T-Rex arms thing all the time? No, but I've always done it. I've always had sort of a more awkward posture. My arm will go up in a weird way while I'm walking. And I have definitely been teased for that. And when I run, my parents have always said, you run like you've got rudders, which makes you really want to run in front of them. I still played field hockey and soccer. Stereotypes are funny. I mean, not all of them, but the way they come about. And I honestly think most of them come from we all try to categorize and label things that we don't necessarily understand, or that's how we make understanding of them. It's not just the autistics that like to sort things into and put them into their categories to make them make sense. That much I know for sure. Though we are organizers. Some of us, that would be a stereotype. And you know what? I am not as organized as I like to be. However, I have a chaotic system that does work for me. And then some other less chaotic systems that are very, very rigid. It's almost like life's a spectrum and I have my own spectrum while being on the spectrum. But that's the great thing about stereotypes, or the bad thing about stereotypes. They're there. The stereotype that autistic people lack empathy, it's really the opposite. 9 times out of 10, I would say hyper empathetic. Maybe we don't express it the way you'd want us to, but very, very empathetic. I have a strong sense of justice, and certain things make me so mad. And then I'm mad for no reason, and there's nothing I can do about the thing. And even that sense of justice, that's a stereotype. But that's a stereotype for one of my birth signs too, because Libra. I'm not actually sure where I'm going with all of this, but one thing's for sure. One of those stereotypes on that list, male, I don't fall into at all. And you know what? There's a lot of women that obviously don't. And that's okay. But that is a huge stereotype. And it's because the research isn't around women. It's around boys. It's not even really around, it's not around adults, but it's mostly around boys. And we are working to change that, but there's a reason that I am one of many, many, many women who have been diagnosed much, much later in age for something that is usually diagnosed in or before elementary school. Everything's a work in progress. Knowledge is power. So, how does autism present differently in women? Well, lots of ways. So I'm looking at the researchautism.org website, and there's an article entitled An Autistic Woman Addresses 9 Common Misconceptions About Autism. So the very first one was, "You don't seem very autistic to me." I got that from someone who had 30 years in vocational rehabilitation training when I disclosed to them. And I'm still mad about it. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Like, what does that mean? I mean, I know what it means intellectually, but like, come on, don't say that to people. Just negate everything that someone has to say. I mean, telling someone your diagnosis, I mean, it just comes out of my mouth. I don't care. Things fall out of my head and I live with what I have to say. And that's, that's me. Like I said, I'm obviously still spicy over that. And ableism is everywhere, even in the services designed to help us. Spoiler alert. Anyway, next on this list they cobbled together, are you high functioning? And I admit to having fallen into this trap until probably 4 or 5 years ago. And that's just because with more information and working within the disabled community, I gained more knowledge and more vocabulary. And then my own journey gave me better words and tools for descriptions. High and low functioning, they were meant in the best way, but they're kind of insulting because you know what? I am technically high functioning, except for there are days when I cannot function even a little bit. And boy, those are just bad days, because then you're mad at yourself because you can't even function because it's not that hard. But it totally is hard. And learning to forgive yourself for being human should be everyone's goal, because I think we're all a little too hard on ourselves and each other. But so the better way to phrase things is support needs. So I have low support needs. Low support needs or high support needs. It's really, I have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder level 1. So I have low support needs. I can live alone and have successfully for a time. But, adulting is hard for everyone, especially in the 40 years I've had to grow up in. And I think I'm still growing up. But the functioning label, it says right here that it can become something of a self-fulfilling prophecy for young autistic people. So if you're told you're low functioning as a child, maybe you're never going to try to see how much more you can do. You're just going to accept that, like, the little bits you have and the little bit you've been allowed to accomplish, that's all you're ever going to get. And everyone deserves a chance to try, Next up would be, are all autistic people geniuses or computer nerds like Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory? And I have a lot of thoughts on The Big Bang Theory. I don't think it's aging as well as I would have liked. But I also know that I have been Sheldon in places, and I've also been Penny. Or I've been made to feel like Penny. I had a much better grasp of understanding of what was going on around me than she would have. But that's just because I'm wired differently, and engineers in college tend to have an air of superiority that is or isn't earned. But some of us are savants, some of us aren't. I have a higher than average IQ, not much though. I process information faster than 90% of my peers, and which means I am constantly not in the same place in a conversation as other people, and it's very frustrating, and I have to keep slowing myself down. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. It turns out autistic people are human too. You know, we have our wins and our losses. We have our skills, and I know someone who is she's smart, gifted, couldn't handle school, and now I think she's working in a pharmacy, but she's doing okay because that's what's good. And yeah, I have also left the regular working world because I couldn't deal with it. And it's not because I'm not smart, it's because I got overloaded and needed to take a break. And now I'm seeing what else can happen. So, next up, we have autistic people don't have relationships or sex. So, there is a whole level of stigma within the disabled community over relationships, sex, marriage, all of that jazz. And it's entirely dependent on the people involved. Just like in a neurotypical world, seriously, it's the same. It's a spectrum. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. I have been in several long-term relationships. I'm cohabitating with someone. We've been together for 7 years and lived together for 6. And it's going great. And we're so happy because we got together when we were old enough to know what we were looking for realistically. So, and we're both very, very communicative of our needs. And we'll talk just about relationships at some point in time. Just like and subscribe if you want more from me. I mean, I'll probably try and stick around anyway, but subscribe if you want to try and hold me accountable to having a posting schedule. Because, again, I'm a little bit afraid that I can't pull this off. But, all right, let's stop that digressing. Because, I'll read what this website has to say in response to autistic people don't have relationships or sex. Many autistic people are sexual beings in the same way anyone else is a sexual being. They have relationships, marriages, casual sex, and other sorts of sexual interactions. A lot of autistic people identify as being queer or gender diverse. While some autistic people identify as asexual, this is not the reality for everyone. Just because autistic people might not fit the stereotype of who should be having sex and relationships doesn't mean we don't or shouldn't do it. And I totally agree with that. And honestly, if my family's watching, this is probably TMI. My relationship with sex has very much been colored by my autism in that way that how do you know if you actually like someone without knowing them intimately? And I would honestly, experiment to know if I actually liked a person as a person or not, because I don't really understand people to begin with. So it's kind of like, to quote someone I used to work with, is the juice worth the squeeze? And some people yes, some people no. But, I get to make that choice, and that's pretty great. But I also used to find myself in situations where I'd be like, I don't not consent, but I also don't remember how I got myself into this situation, but I guess I'm here, so we'll just go with it. And I'm only really recently begun to unpack that, so that's been a whole thing. But, that would be the argument I'm like, you shouldn't, but I lived, I learned, I'm still here, and I'm not traumatized. I'm now just understanding and seeing parts of my teens and 20s for what they actually were, as opposed to my perception of them at the time. But you know what? I think every adult does that if they are an introspective type person. So, coupled with that, the next one on this list, autistic people shouldn't have children. Now, I am child-free. but it has nothing to do with my autism. I don't want to have kids. And I think that's the best reason to not have them if you don't want them. I also have my own uncomfortableness with the mechanics of actual being pregnant and birth, and tocophobia is real, seriously. But I also just know that I wouldn't be a great parent. The sound of babies crying is hard. The something needing me all the time. I can't have houseplants because they need me for survival. I killed bamboo. I killed an air plant. It is hard enough for me to take care of me and to be a helpful and nurturing partner to a grown adult. Something that needs me for survival is just not my jam. Every single person with autism will have different things they can and can't handle. My sensory issues would not jive well with children. I have 5 nieces. I have 14 first cousins, and almost every single one of them is married with children. I have a very large family, and I love them all, but I find them draining. I find children screaming exhausting. And you know what? That's okay, because it takes all kinds. I'm good at being the fun aunt. But autistic people can be parents if they want to be. They have just as much right as everyone else. And I know some people who are autistic and are great parents. All right, next up, we've got nonverbal autistic people have an intellectual disability. So there are many autistic people, or people who fall onto the spectrum, who are nonverbal. There's also some people that are just are diagnosed as nonverbal. I actually have a niece who's nonverbal. Or no, is she selectively mute? Boy, when she chooses, dolphins would be jealous. I call them the dolphin children. I love my nieces, though. This website, again, it's researchautism.org, and I will link this in the description. Nonverbal autistic people have an intellectual disability, while some autistic people who do not use speech are nonverbal have a coexisting intellectual disability. This is not always the case. Many nonverbal autistic people are highly intelligent. Many use communication devices to express their thoughts. Some will even use sign language, which I find super impressive, because I have a hard time communicating with people who use sign, because my facial expressions will get lost in translation sometimes. Also, I talk with my hands a lot anyway, and I do know some signs, but my right and my left are bad, and I do them backwards, and I am sorry to the deaf community. I try. Mutual understanding. That's all I ask for. Coupled with that, autistic people can't work. Now, this subject is, I have a lot of feelings, and we will definitely be talking more about this, because I am still processing leaving work in the first place. And it is true, some people can't work. We're overrepresented in unemployment and welfare statistics, and a lot of difficulties surrounding work for autistic people is really a lack of willingness on the world for accommodating us. And I mean, I could rail for hours on workplace accommodations and the level of pushback that happens when you try to get what you deserve. And I used to work in vocational rehabilitation, and I know the program was working very hard to work with the autistic community, and I also know that it's hard. I had a hard time working with people who were literally trained to work with people like me. And that's the truth of the matter. And I mean, it's a lot more complicated. And again, someday we're going to talk. Oh, yeah. I have like a 5-page outline on why it was a bad place for me to be. But I won't dish on them, though. I still believe predominantly in the program, and I hope that they get to exist within the next governmental regime. All right, moving on. Before I start to get on a soapbox that I am not ready to be on just yet about lots of stuff in the VR world. Autistic people are rude. All right, sometimes I am intentionally if I'm aware of it. But I'm going to read what it says here because I have a hard time articulating this. Autistic people are usually interpret the world differently to non-autistic people. We generally want to be liked and we want to be respectful of others. There's often a different culture of social communication between autistic and non-autistic people. Misinterpretations between the different communication styles can occur, and the autistic person may be viewed as rude or uncaring when this is not their intent. If more people understood the differences in communication between autistic and non-autistic people, they would understand our apparent rudeness is often just a misunderstanding. You have no idea. At this point in time, I wasn't invited to my 20th high school reunion because of something I suspect I was perceived to have said in 8th grade. And you know what? I wasn't going to go to my high school reunion anyway, but I still wasn't invited. And I'm actually more entertained than I probably should be, because again, wasn't going to go. When I was in school, most of them didn't even know I was in the class I was in because all of my friends were grade behind me because I was young for my age. But like, being misunderstood is my life. In fact, I am here doing this right now because of a colossal misunderstanding. And my desire to be done being vilified for being misunderstood on a daily basis. But again, not the time for that. Someday. All right. The last part of this this list from researchautism.org is an autistic child is a lost child, a tragedy. And where do you get off? Like, basically, like, bemoaning our existence, pitying us, pitying our families. Like, okay. And maybe this is, I don't want to be ableist. I am well aware that there are the families of level 3 autistic people who have never heard their family members speak or had a hug or any communication or validation, and that's heartbreaking and so hard. But I don't have that, and my experience is valid too, and I deserve to exist. I actually had a great childhood by and large. I was misunderstood, but I also came from a small town of a lot that, took the time to understand. I had a great education. I had really great parents who fought for me. I was almost kept back in the 1st grade because the school thought that I was very, very young. My birthday was 1 week before the cutoff date. So I was one of the youngest in the class. And I was emotionally immature. But my parents asked if I could do the work. And I could. And they knew I would be bored. So I got to go on to 2nd grade with my friends. Most of my friends. Some of my other friends did actually go to readiness. Which is totally fine. We all have different needs. But it would have ruined my relationship with education had I been kept back. And I do know that. And I've actually talked to my mental health care team, and they're full agreement that no, the best thing my parents could have done was to encourage me forward in life at all times. And, I was raised to think I could do anything. And I still think that maybe I can, but at the same time, I'm also learning the difference between can and should. I can do anything, but I should do things that make me happy and are, productive in ways that aren't detrimental to me, because so much of the world isn't designed for someone like me. And I flew under the radar for so long that I am still unpacking that it's okay for me to have other needs. Like, not to get into something I'm not ready for, but I never actually got around to asking for workplace supports because I didn't have the mental bandwidth to figure out what I needed. But also the very idea of needing supports is sort of foreign to me. For me, I don't know why I will fight for anyone to have what they need and deserve to work with their disability, but I struggle for it myself. And maybe that's kind of stereotypes of being a woman, I guess, but and here we are, falling into more stereotypes. But the thing is I know I've said it before. When you know one autistic person, you know exactly one autistic person. These stereotypes are there because of people's conceptions, misconceptions, and perceptions of what they don't understand. And I don't understand anyone. People are crazy. I have an anthropology degree because I wanted to study people. Also, I'm super into watching cultural documentaries, and I'd actually seen a lot of the ones I watched for anthropology and sociology classes before my professors ever did, which made paper writing much easier, but I digress. So, I don't know what the ultimate takeaway from this ultimately is, other than I guess the thing I just said. These stereotypes, just try to look past stereotypes. We live in a bizarrely divisive time, and I'm not arguing for anyone to be the bigger person here. I am just saying look past stereotypes when you can. Research them, find out why they exist in the first place. And then let's try to move past them and accept that we're all weirdos. Everyone has their idiosyncrasies, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're all good. It's all good. So have a great rest of your day. And remember to always chuck and roll.